Hello friends, my name is Marines, and today I have a review of Stormfront by Jim Butcher. As you see in the title of this video, this is a 1-star review of this book, so if that is going to upset you, feel free to skip this one. Now you guys know that I will occasionally read a book that I suspect that I will dislike, and I will do that for a number of reasons, but that was not the case here. I did not go into this book suspecting that I would dislike it. In fact, I picked it up because I was interested in picking up a new long-running series. I am caught up with the Mercy Thompson series. I am caught up with the In Death series. I'm almost done with Kate Daniels. So I was like, okay, I want to start a new urban fantasy series, something long-running, something that I can invest time into and sort of binge. And I had heard really fantastic things about the Dresden Files. So I was like, cool, let's start there. Wow. I didn't enjoy anything about reading this. I think maybe the first page of this book was like the last time I was like having a good time. And the only positive thing that I can say about it is that the line, "My name is Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, conjure by it at your own risk," is like a good line. I will stand by that. What a great line. There were also like a few times where his snark hit with me in terms of humor, where I was like, okay, that was funny or whatnot. But those times felt few and far between, especially towards the end when his character in general built up so much ill will with me that I was like, stone-faced no matter what he did, but we'll get to there. I just kind of wanted to lead off with positives, but that's all I have for you because truly reading this was a miserable experience for me. I will also say that with a long-running series, and what I have found with like urban fantasy series in particular, is that I will give them grace for the first book because I find that a lot of times these first books are not the best, especially with something that is long-running. They are the most dated, and it is the buildup of like lore and characters and character relationships that I truly love in them, so that takes time. So I'm willing to go into one of these series and kind of give those first few books grace, but there still has to be something there to hook me. One of the things that I cannot stand is when I'm saying I didn't enjoy a book and like fans of that book or series are like, oh no, you've got to give it 3 books before it gets good, 4 books before it gets good. And I'm like, and no, I don't have to give it anything. A lot of times I am willing to give a series time, but again, something has to hook me. This is not the best book in the Kate Daniels series. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I'm up to book 8 and I really, really loved the series as a whole. And so despite the weaker portions of this book, I kept on. What was the hook here for me? Atlanta as a setting and the way that Ilona Andrews really brought like new life into that setting, and Kate Daniels as a main character. Even when this book was being a little bit repetitive and there's like a plot point in here in specific which made absolutely no sense to me, I still loved Kate. Like from the moment Kate shows up on page, I liked her. And by the time that she goes, "Here kitty kitty" to Curran, I was in love. So selling point. Naked in Death is not the best book in the In Death series, and I was kind of on the fence about continuing because I gave this one like a 2-star, but even for all of the ways that this is dated, the way that the relationship at the heart of it made me really uncomfortable in the beginning, there were still hooks here. One was the way that Nora Roberts writes a mystery. I was hooked by the mystery and I wanted to know who did it, and Eve Dallas as a main character. From the beginning, I just absolutely loved her and was emotionally invested in hearing her story. If you were to ask me a single reason why I would continue on with the Dresden Files at this point, like in good faith, like actually because I wanted to enjoy it, I don't have a hook. There is nothing here that I could say like, yeah, I would like to see more of this or learn more about this. I'm going to leave like the worst thing that this book did overall for last, but we'll start with some of the other stuff that maybe could have saved it, but didn't. So first is sort of the world building. When I go into an urban fantasy series, I'm expecting a certain level of tropiness. It's like romance to me, in which like I go into a romance expecting certain things, including a happily ever after. I go into romance for the tropiness of it all because I want those buttons pushed, and that feels the same as an urban fantasy. Like I am going into it for certain tropes, right? So at first in the world building, I saw the way that it was pulling in like influences of the genre, and that felt really like at home. That's exactly the sort of thing I enjoy seeing in an urban fantasy, the way it pulls in different lore and different like pieces of magic. But the thing is that it kind of has to make it its own in some way, and I didn't feel like we quite got there in this first book. A lot of it felt really messy, and it felt like it was missing like pieces of internal logic. I didn't get a clear picture about like how the magic was even working, and a lot of times we were told things and then shown contradictions, or at least not shown consequences of this. So for instance, he tells us that you can go into a home uninvited, but it's bad juju. And then we watch him go into homes uninvited with like no consequences. Or he'll say that like magic pulls a lot of energy and he's running low. He does not have the energy to do the magic, but then we just watch him do the magic. And then the entire idea of where the energy is coming from is left kind of hanging open. We see him pull from a specific source in the story in a way that I was like, okay, cool, I get it, like energy to feed the magic. But then other times he just does the magic, and then it's like, okay, what's I don't understand like where the source of energy is coming from. So all of that just felt kind of hand wavy and wishy-washy. And while I'm not a person that like needs a hard magic system, if you're going to raise the topics about like energy sources and like rules for entering houses, then follow through. I can do a vibes only magic system. I enjoy vibes only magic systems, but you've got to tread carefully not to like contradict the things that you're saying, or to open doors that you have no interest in like looking through or walking through, so that the reader is just like, what's happening here? The plot was also just sort of mid to me. I have a thing about anything that is like a mystery and there is investigation. I really like active investigation versus passive investigation. I like to see more of the character going out and looking for things and asking questions in a really proactive way, versus things feeling really convenient or like making themselves known or falling conveniently into place for our main character. And I felt like there was a little bit too much of just like things falling into place for Harry, and in general for what is supposed to be a one-of-a-kind character. You know, there's no other wizards in Chicago, and he's got an amount of like training and power, we're told repeatedly. So for a character that is supposed to be our hero and also very powerful, he is pretty passive in his own story. It feels like everybody is pushing him around. He keeps taking things on he doesn't really want to take on, and it doesn't feel like it's coming from a necessarily like righteous or good place. And so it just leaves him feeling like incredibly, like I said a million times, passive in his own story. And I wish we had seen a little more like oomph from this character. And so that affects like the mystery plot of this all, because I just didn't feel very compelled. I didn't feel very invested. And even so, it felt pretty clear to me what we were working towards. And there were no big like aha moments. There were no surprises or misdirections. It just felt very flat. As for the other characters in the story, I was going to say I don't have strong feelings about them, but I feel like I wanted to punch almost all of them in the face at least once. Maybe not like the barkeep that grunts a lot. He was fine. He also says like 3 words the entire time, but pretty much everyone else in the story I wanted to punch in the face at one point or another. So world building and magic, plot, supporting characters, and that brings us to the main character himself, Mr. Dresden. Oh my freaking God, was I unprepared for the way that I would just absolutely hate being in this character's head. We'll start with like the smallest thing, and that is that he is sort of complainy. Like there is a complaining nature, whiny nature to his narrative voice that I did not enjoy. This was not helped at all by the fact that I was listening to it on audiobook. Despite having high hopes for James Marsters, I ended up really not enjoying his performance because there is a breathy quality to it. It sounds like he's sighing half of the lines, and so that doesn't help the fact that I felt like Harry was like super complaining. Like he's just sighing everything. There were too many mouth noises in the performance itself to be like an enjoyable thing in my ears. So Dresden is whiny and passive. There are moments that he's incredibly like self-deprecating, which pairs up with that whiny in a way that I just kind of wanted to slap him out of it. But then there were also times where he's like, yeah, I'm the most, I'm so trained, I'm so powerful, I'm so this and I'm so that. And I'm just like, okay, you can stop with that also. I didn't feel like he had like a single good quality or redeeming quality or like anywhere where I felt was like an emotional entry point into this series at all, or into him or his story. And we're getting his story through his first person narration. So it is very, very tied to his worldview, his narrative voice, and all of that. And if that weren't enough, we come to the material point that makes this absolutely unreadable. Harry Dresden is a chauvinistic pig. This story is full of misogyny and sexism in a way that, again, just colors so much of it. We're told almost immediately from his own point of view that he's like old-fashioned, right? That's what he calls himself. It's all about chivalry. He can't keep up with these modern times and modern ladies or whatnot. So you get the sense that this is like part of his personality, but it's like the casual sexism that like bleeds into everything, and the way he describes women and the way that the story itself uses its female characters and the way that the story and this plot uses sex in just like really strange ways that create this experience that, like I said, was nearly unreadable. I had to push myself to the end, all with the end goal of like being able to complain about how unenjoyable this was. I highlighted pretty much every moment that gave me pause in terms of like a description of a female character or something he thought or said. Why don't we run through them? She had a voice that was a little hoarse, like that of a cheerleader who'd been working a long tournament but had enough weight of years in it to place her as an adult. Okay. On its own, just kind of a weird description, but let me assure you, this is not the first time he'll describe a woman as being cheerleader-like. Like here, where my features are all lean and angular with a hawkish nose and a sharp chin, hers are round and smooth with the kind of cute nose you'd expect on a cheerleader. We are describing a full-grown adult woman, by the way. Murphy never wore dresses, though I suspected she'd have muscular, well-shaped legs, like a gymnast. This is Harry running to hold open a door for Murphy. It was an old contest of ours. Maybe my values are outdated, but I come from an old school of thought. I think that men ought to treat women like something other than just shorter, weaker men with breasts. Try and convict me if I'm a bad person for thinking so. I enjoy treating a woman like a lady, opening doors for her, paying for shared meals, giving flowers, all that sort of thing. Here's the thing about chivalry. If it's unwanted, it stops being chivalrous and it just becomes creepy. Dresden reads like a nice guy type. You know, the guy who's like, I don't understand why girls don't like me. I'm such a nice guy. You know, the kind that immediately stops being a nice guy once they are rejected. Like, if this woman has expressed she is annoyed by you running forward to hold open doors for her, we're talking about this in the context of her place of employment where she is an authority figure. You like running forward because of your old-fashioned values to hold the door open even though it annoys her, that's not chivalry, my guy. You're a jerk. He walks into a crime scene and there are two bodies and they died in the middle of a sex act. And so he describes the woman who is on top as her back bowed like a dancer's, the curves of her breasts making a lovely outline. Which, whatever, it's a murder scene, kind of weird that you're just like taking note of her breasts. It gets even weirder when you find out that the way that they have been killed is that their hearts have been blown out of their bodies. He says that the lovers' rib cages on the upper left side of their torso had expanded outward through their skin, the ribs jabbing out like ragged snap knives. So somehow their chests have been blown open, but the curves of her breast are completely intact. So you can be like, ah, yes, a lovely dead woman and the lovely curves of her breast, despite the fact that her chest is blown open. Okay. The murder scene is so gruesome, save for the breasts that are intact, that he says that if he didn't get out of the room in a hurry, he was going to start crying like a little girl. Then when the detectives are asking him about his impressions, about how this was done and who could have done it, he says that he doesn't know who could have done it, but it was probably a woman, because you can't do something that bad without a whole lot of hate. Women are better at hating than men. They can focus it better, let it go better. Hell, witches are just plain meaner than wizards. This feels like feminine vengeance of some kind to me. Murphy is pressing him for information on this brutal murder, and she says, I need to know everything you can tell me, Harry, please. And he goes, classic lady in distress. For one of those liberated professional women, she knew exactly how to jerk my old-fashioned chains around. Oh my God. The best part is that at this point, 24 pages in, this has all been in 24 pages. We don't know anything about Murphy except for she has a job and she's asked him not to like make it a point to run to every door and hold it open for her. And he's like, ugh. those liberated professional women jerking him around, right? His old-fashioned chains around. And what she said was, I need to know everything you can tell me, Harry, please. Oh my God, so manipulative, right? He describes the one dark-skinned woman in the story as having lazy appeal in her dark eyes. One of the things that appealed to me about her was that even though she used her charm and femininity relentlessly in the pursuit of her stories, she had no concept of just how attractive she really was. We love a man who loves a woman who doesn't know she's beautiful, and that's what makes her beautiful. Oh my God. So Harry has this like air spirit that lives in a skull who helps him out basically with like knowledge and remembering potions and things like that. And he's also pretty much the worst. Harry asks him to help with a potion that is like plot relevant. And the spirit stuck in the skull, who all he wants to do is get out and bone people, says that he'll only do it if Harry agrees to make a love potion. Harry doesn't want to make a love potion, but then the more that Bob insists, the more he starts to consider if maybe he could use the love potion on our one black character. And then he goes, no, that would be too much. That would be like admitting I couldn't get a woman to like me on my own. And it would be unfair, taking advantage of the woman. When he thinks about why he shouldn't drug a woman, essentially, the first thing that he thinks is that no, he wouldn't do that because it would be admitting that he couldn't get the woman on his own. That's like the number one thing. He's like, no, I won't do that because it's somehow cheating. And that's your concern. And then we get into the actual making of the potion, and Bob is asking for ingredients. So the first is tequila, and Harry's like, tequila? Are you sure about that one? I thought the base for a love potion was supposed to be champagne. Champagne, tequila, what's the difference? So long as it'll lower her inhibitions. The next ingredient is 3 ounces of dark chocolate. Chocolate, I demanded. Chicks are into chocolate, Harry. And so goes the making of the love potion. And it also is like just a plot annoyance to me because of course they make this love potion and sort of like leave it there, and yuck, later on in the story it becomes a thing that of course somebody takes the love potion, and the woman who takes it ends up being in a precarious situation while her life is in danger. So we literally have to watch her like humping Harry while like a demon is coming for them. So that was cool. That was so fun to read about. And I mean, I could keep going. I could just keep reading all of these highlights that I made, and all of those are examples of him being the absolute worst. I went on TikTok in the middle of my shock to complain about this and be like, am I missing something? Is this like a thing? And also really curious if this was like the setup of an arc. Like he starts as a chauvinist and then like, I don't know, over the books he gets better. To be clear, not because I'm interested in that arc. That would make me quit even harder if I were signing up for a story where a man learns not to be a misogynist. No interest in that arc whatsoever. The majority of the comments that I got said that it in fact never gets better, and in fact it gets worse as the series goes on. I did have a handful of people say that it does get better after like 4 books into the series, a handful of those people, and only one person categorized it as growth. So it seems to me that even if like the elements themselves like lessen as it goes, it's not necessarily like set up as like, oh, Harry is like learning things, as much as it's like, oh, the author isn't including this as often. But I don't know, if you read it, you can sound off on that in the comments below. I'm at the point that I would only continue reading this to see if it gets better. But also that's like a high price to pay, is to like subject myself to this. You know, I was hopeful. I tried to like this book. I really didn't. 1 out of 5 stars, as I said in the beginning. That's it for me today. If you have read or would like to read Stormfront by Jim Butcher, let's chat down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon. So I don't know. I honestly don't know. I don't know. Oh my God, wait, no, one of these highlights is just me like dying because Harry picks up a clue literally by like being like, hey, what's this? And it's a newspaper talking about like the thing that is connected to his case. The article is like, new thing just on scene, and it's exactly what his case is about. So really great storytelling and detectiving there.